Hello, it's Heidi here, and this is the first of our social impact webinars. And hopefully at the end of today's session, you'll have a clearer idea about what social impact is, and we'll start to move forward so that by the end of the 6-week course, you're really clear on what your social impact is and how you're going to measure and record it. Before we get started though, I just want to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a chartered accountant by background. I trained nearly 15 years ago, and I've been running up until last year a community interest company that provided accountancy services for social enterprises and charities. And since the beginning of this year, I've started to focus much more on social impact reporting and social return on investment work, as well as helping businesses and social enterprises to grow and become more sustainable. I've been doing social impact and social return on investment work for about 15 years now, and that has involved working with youth organisations, employment and training organisations, organisations that work with ex-offenders, people with drug and alcohol problems, a lot of health and social care organisations, including organisations that help people with hearing difficulties, eating disorders, and lots of other health issues, as well as working with some arts and cultural organisations to look at what their social impact is. So the range of organisations has been from really, really small ones with incomes of about 20,000 right through to organisations with incomes of over 60 million. So there's a very, very large range in terms of the organisations that want to look at their social impact. In terms of the webinar programmes, this first one is all around what is social impact measurement. Next week, we'll be looking at what you're going to measure for your particular organisation, and then we'll go on to look at your stakeholders and the data that you would need to collect, followed by looking at how you're going to collect the data. So looking at what you've already got, and what additional data you would need to evidence the impact that you have as an organisation. The 5th week, then we're going to look at how you can include financial figures and data, particularly of importance if you get contracts or are looking to tender for public sector agency contracts. So if you're looking to work with a local authority, health agencies, social services, schools, etc., this is a great session because it will be able to show you how you can demonstrate that your services and support or your products will save those agencies money in the long term. And then finally, we're going to look at how you can prepare your report and share it, and what information you can share and in what format that can be shared. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of these 6 weeks sessions. In terms of what social impact is, it's really looking at the difference that you make as an organisation, so the change that you achieve for people, the planet, or for the community or the economy. So 4 levels of outcomes and impact that I look at when I do reporting, and I recommend that you also do that. The first one is looking at the social impacts that you have, so the changes that you make to people. The second one is looking at your economic impacts, so the impacts that change the economy. So if you employ people, provide training, which means people can earn more money, those kind of financial impacts. Then you've got your environmental impacts, so how you as an organisation impact the environment, and then finally looking at kind of wider community regeneration or community initiatives and outcomes that you achieve. So if you're located in a community, have you had a wider impact on the regeneration of that area? So have more community groups moved into that area as a result of you doing your work there, or have there been some other unintended consequences that are positive for that community? So really we're talking about your triple bottom line, and this is something that people often refer to quite frequently, and it perhaps is something that you've heard people reference, which is really your impact on people, planets and profit. And you should be talking about all three equally in terms of what you achieve as an organisation. Now, one of the things that I want to mention to you is about the Social Value Act that came into force in February 2013. This only applies if you're delivering public services, so services on behalf of a statutory agency. And it covers services only, it doesn't cover goods. So if you supply products, equipment, etc., then they're not covered within this legislation. But what this legislation does, it means that anyone within a public sector agency who is commissioning work must take social value into consideration at the pre-procurement stage. So social value is the same thing as social impact. Those phrases are used interchangeably. And what this actually means in terms of, in reality, how it works is that when a commissioner is looking to develop a tender or a specification for a service that they require, they must then consider the social value at that point before they go out and start the tendering and purchasing or procurement process. So it's before that document has come out, and then the service gets delivered. There's a review and an analysis which then should affect the specification further being developed. So they only have to consider social value. It doesn't mean that they have to actually do anything about it, which is a negative thing within the legislation. But what we're actually finding is that quite a lot of commissioners are applying social value to all of the contracts that they put out to tender. So one of the things, if you are going to be trying to get a contract, is that there will be a question around how you can improve the social value. So this would be talking about the social, environmental and economic benefits for that particular area or that community where they're procuring the service for. And also, interestingly, some commissioners are also applying this to the supply of goods and products as well. So that's a good thing. And it's really, really positive in terms of what some local authorities are doing around this. Others are really, really, really slack and not doing very much, but it's getting more and more press and coverage, and there's more encouragement for people to actually implement this. But unfortunately, a lot of commissioners don't really understand social value that much. They can't really incorporate it into their tender documents. The other thing that I want to mention in terms of social impact is that there are absolutely loads of different methods and techniques and approaches out there that you can use to measure your social impact. And often that is one of the reasons why people don't actually start and do their social impact measurement, because there's such confusion. They think it's really complex. There's a lot of effort and extra work required to do it. When in reality, although there's 60 methods out there, most of the social impact reports that are actually produced are based on either social accounting or social return on investment principles. So there's actually not that much of a variety in terms of the methodologies and techniques that people use in reality. But what these two methods do is they enable you to report on the performance and what has changed within your organisation. So the real difference that you make to the people, communities, environment that you work with. And it's meant to be a business development and improvement tool. So it should fit with your business planning and development processes, because what these measuring your social impact will tell you is where you're actually performing really well, where you're achieving lots, but it will also tell you where, if you're delivering a particular service or a project, where you're not actually achieving very much through that, and therefore where you need to focus your improvements and look at how you can improve the delivery of that particular project or service, so that you can do better in future in terms of achieving more outcomes. One of the things that I found from my experience with organisations is where they make it part of their whole organisation, and achieving outcomes and making a difference is a priority, and it's something that everyone within the organisation who works there understands, then it becomes a very simple process to get involved with. Whereas if it's left down to one person to do it all, then it usually is much more difficult, because they're not necessarily the person that has access to the people or the organisations that you're working with, and can't collect all the data, but they're responsible for trying to report on it without adequate information. So one of the ways that organisations can make it a requirement of their staff is to include it in job descriptions and also in the appraisal system. So setting objectives for particular members of staff to collect information or to do particular elements of the social impact reporting and measurement requirements. Okay, so there's a couple of websites that I want to just show you quickly. So Social Value UK, this is, if it comes up, what used to be the Social Return on Investment Network. And one of the good things about their website is that they have over on the right hand side the tools and resources. So let's just do a screen share over here. Over on the right hand side, they have these tools and resources where you can look at some case studies. You can see what social return on investment is. There's some publications, and there's all different bits of information. They've also got a section around what is social return on investment, so people can really look and see what is involved in those things. The next one that I want to show you is the Social Audit Network. So this is where social accounting is shown on their website, so Social Audit Network. And again, they've got bits of information about the organisation. You can learn more. There's some case studies, information, and different bits and pieces on there as well. So again, a really useful website. The final thing that I want to show you is an example of one of the reports that I've done for an organisation called Provide. So let's just type in. So Provide Social Impact Report. Provide is a community hospital. They spun out from the NHS about 3-4 years ago, and one of the things they decided they wanted to do was a social impact report. Now, their income is approximately, at the time of doing this, was around 65-67 million pounds, and it's now around 90 to 100 million. So in terms of, for them as an organisation, one of the priorities was really identifying what areas they were going to focus in on and report in their first social impact report, because there was no way that they could look at the entire organisation, so all 60 million pounds worth of the services that they were delivering. So they looked at their wheelchair and falls prevention services, their smoking cessation, and their sexual health services as the 3 key service areas, and collected data and case studies in those areas. They also looked at what they did in terms of providing employment, training, work experience and volunteering opportunities, and there was a small section on their environmental impact as well, because they'd been measuring the amount of tonnes of CO2 that they were actually using, and they had a plan in place to try and reduce them. So as you can see from just the highlights, you can go into the report. It's an extensive report. They've made it all glossy and pretty with their marketing team, but the reporting data is something that I actually produced and did the analysis for them. But as you can see, from having 158 students doing clinical placements within their organisation, this has got an economic value of nearly £400,000. So it's interesting and really useful for you to think about, well, how can training and volunteering placements be monetized to show the value that you actually produce for the economy. There's 36 million goes into the local economy because they have got 145 extra members of staff they employed during the year, and 93% of them live locally. So what this is telling us is that a lot of the money that the staff receive as salaries goes into the local economy, whereas if all your staff live a long way from the community that you work in, it's likely that a lot of that money will leave that local community, so you'd have less of an impact in terms of the economy in that situation. So that's one to have a look at if you're interested in seeing what's happening and what's going on. So let's just flip back into the slides and do this new, just reshare this screen so you can see that. So let's move on to the next page. So what you'll see from the reports and information that I've shared so far is that there tends to be this kind of blend of social accounting and social return on investment techniques. So social accounting is much more about case studies and explaining what you the changes that you make for people, whereas social return on investment is all about trying to get your social impact down into a financial value. So for every pound that you receive, you generate so many pounds worth of social value for the local community. And what's tended to happen is that social return on investment has had a lot of support and backing from the government, because it links quite nicely to encouraging people to make investments into social enterprises and charities, because it gives them quite a simple financial figure. So if they invest £1, it generates £10 worth of social impact for the local community. Whereas social accounting is much more telling the story of the people and the community and the environment and the difference that you make. So it's a lot wordier and not necessarily so easy for people to quickly grasp and understand. But I personally think if you just include a number, then you lose all the story and the detail that's behind social accounting method and what you would get from including case studies. So I would recommend that you think about perhaps having a blend of both of them, or alternatively just being quite detailed in terms of case studies and talking about the numbers of people that you worked with and the number of outcomes that you've achieved, and perhaps not include any financial data. Okay, so benefits of measuring your social impact. identifies where you're achieving your greatest impact, where you've got areas to improve, which we've already mentioned that it should be part of your business planning process. Another key thing is it involves all of your stakeholders in the process, or your key stakeholders, so the people that you have some relationship or impact or connection with, who are involved with your organisation. So perhaps your trustees, your board, your staff, volunteers, your service users or beneficiaries or customers, whatever you call them, your partner organisations, funders, and various other stakeholders that you may have. It also helps you in terms of marketing your organisation. And if you're trying to sell or trade products or services, it's a good way to potentially increase the number of local community members that buy services from you, because they can see that you make a difference to the local area. And it also gives you this evidence and supporting information for when you're trying to get either grants, other sources of funding, tendering for contracts, or alternatively when you're trying to get investment as well. So it's really, really useful method to evidence and support what you can actually achieve as an organisation. Okay, so in terms of the process, I just want to talk really, really quickly through this so that you understand what the key steps are for getting through this process. The first thing to do is be really, really clear about what your organisation is trying to achieve. So what its mission is, what's the purpose, why was your organisation set up? And what I often find when I'm working with organisations is that their mission was written several years ago, or it's slightly out of date. It's not necessarily reflective of what they're currently doing. So it's good to go back and review this and check that your mission, so the purpose of your organisation, is actually up to date and correct. And then to look at the values of the organisation. So what are the key things that are important in terms of the way your organisation works and the way your organisation is? So things like equality for everyone, treating everyone as an individual, being positive, doing the most you can to support people, whatever your values are as an organisation. And if you don't have any values, then it may be worth doing an exercise with your staff and perhaps your board to look at what the organisation's values should be. But we're going to talk about that in a bit more detail next week as well. And then your objectives. So this is the way that you actually deliver your mission. So what are the key objectives for you as an organisation to achieve? And once you've got clear on those things, you then need to look at what they call establishing the scope. And this is just saying, well, in your first social impact reporting period, what are you going to measure? Are you going to measure everything the organisation has done? Are you going to measure specific projects? Are you going to look at particular geographical areas, etc.? And we're going to come back and touch on that next week in more detail. Then it would be looking at your stakeholders and how you're going to involve them in the social impact measurement and reporting process. Then we move on to impact mapping, which is where you look at the process from what goes in at the beginning, so the resources and staff that go in at the beginning, to the outcomes that you achieve, and these are based on what each of the different stakeholders want as outcomes. And also then to think about any unintended consequences or negative outcomes that you may achieve. Once you've done all of that, the data collection stage actually starts at this point. Often people think it's all about collecting data, but actually there's quite a lot of work that goes or has to be done in advance in preparation of you being able to collect your data. And then you've got your analysis of your data, and finally you report on the impact you've achieved, as well as the areas that you've got to improve. So once you've got your data, it's a relatively quick process in terms of them analysing and producing a report. Okay, so I just want to explain what social impact is. When people often talk about all these different words: inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and then impacts. So I want to just explain it through this example. So the inputs are the people, equipment, money and other resources that you put into your organisation in order to deliver your activities. So in this example, they're delivering a training session for some people. The output then is the number of people that complete that training session. So outputs is just talking about the numbers of people or the numbers of things that you achieve. And then your outcomes would be the difference or the change that has happened to that individual. So in this case, we're saying as a result of them being on the training course, they have now got increased self-confidence. And then the key bit then is saying, well, from that outcome that has been achieved through this training course, what is the actual impact that you as an organisation can claim? So what difference are you responsible for? And in this case, we're saying, well, actually what's happened, because their confidence has increased, they've then been able to go on and secure a job. And that impact is all down solely to the work that your organisation has done. It may be that if you were working jointly with another organisation, so you were working on their self-confidence, motivation and self-esteem, for example, and another organisation was training them to be a plumber or electrician or something, that you would then have to share the employment outcome, because the impact for you as an organisation is only half of that, because the other organisation is jointly responsible for the fact that this young person or this individual has been able to get a job because they were doing some other training alongside you. So it's thinking about where you can only claim for the bit of an outcome that you're responsible for, really. Okay, so the next thing in terms of my tips for this social impact process is to make sure it is manageable. Look at how you can use case studies to bring this social impact or your social value to life, and also make it part of your business planning process so you're continually improving. The other thing which not many organisations do at the moment, but it's something that I think is going to be much more useful and important going forward, is rather than just using social impact measurement to look at your past work and to report on what you've delivered and achieved over the last 12 months or last year, is also to start looking at it and predicting the social impact that you can have with your future work. So when you're then applying for funding or tenders, you can say, we know from the work that we've done previously, if we deliver this project or this program, this is the social impact that we can achieve, and these are perhaps the potential savings that we can have for statutory agencies as well. And that's quite a powerful thing to have within a tender document or a grant funding application, because it's really showing that you're very clear about the difference that your projects and services and products, etc., make. And then what you can do once you've got that money is track whether the social impact you actually achieve is what you'd originally predicted to do, or whether you achieve more or less. And it's a great way for you then to be able to make quite quick changes to your services or your delivery if you're not achieving the social impact that you anticipated and planned on achieving. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? There was one question earlier around if you're delivering arts and cultural services and you're making them more accessible to people, how you can measure the social impact of that. And it's an interesting one, because what you'd need to think about is what you're actually doing as an organisation. Is it about making people more aware of art and culture, or is it about education, or is it trying to get people more involved in art and culture? And once you've decided what exactly it is, then you can survey those people to see if you've actually achieved those things. So are people going to more arts and cultural events because they're more aware of them? Are people actually getting involved in arts and cultural events? So are they actually playing instruments? Are they painting? Are they doing whatever the arts and cultural activities are? Are they physically doing them on a regular basis, or are they just more aware of what arts and cultural activities are available out there across the local area? So you'd need to be surveying them to really identify what the key outcomes are and the differences that those kind of services would make. The other question that I was asked was around whether this process takes a year, etc. And what I would say, if you've already got some data, then you could potentially get this done within 6 weeks to 2 months, completely from starting the process to having a finished report. If you've got no data at all, depending on the number of people you're working with, then you're potentially looking at a slightly longer period, or alternatively, you're putting the systems in place to start collecting the data now with a view to reporting within after the end of that programme, or after the end of this year. So you would perhaps put the systems in place to start collecting the data from the beginning of July, and then collect data for 12 months. So you'd be waiting till the end of June next year before you then started to do the analysis and produce your social impact report. So it really depends what position you're in as to what is going to be the most appropriate way for you to go about doing this social impact reporting, and whether you've got some data or not, and that will affect how quickly you can produce your social impact reports. But it's not a scary process. Hopefully you found the webinar today useful in terms of an overview of social impact reporting. What we're going to be looking at next week, and I hope you're going to be excited about this, is getting really clear about your mission, values and objectives, and also deciding what to measure for your first social impact report. So we'll really start to do some work on your organisations next week. If you do have any questions or any thoughts after today's webinar, you've got my contact details. It's Heidi at heidilfisher.com, so there's an L in there. You've got my phone number if you do need to contact me, and also the website. You can submit an inquiry via the website or contact me via the website as well. So hopefully that's been useful. Have a very pleasant rest of the day, and yeah, see you next week. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.